Hi everyone, this is the SEBA call for May 14th, 2019. We have two items on the agenda. One is a demo of the cord control utility Scott has been working on, and then we're going to do a JIRA review of items since the uh, last meeting where we did a review. With that, I think I'm going to hand over to Scott, and you have a demo, correct, Scott?
Yeah, I've got a demo. Let me take over the screen and I'll get a terminal window up. Okay, is everyone seeing a terminal window with just one prompt in it?
We can see
Oh,
you.
is that a yes? Okay, great, thank you. So we've been working on this new command line tool. We've called it Cord CTL, and it is a command line client primarily for the SEBA NEM layer, most specifically XOS. We did debate what name to call it, whether it should be SEBA CTL or XOS CTL or Cord CTL. But we thought, the breadth of use cases it fits, we'd call it Cord CTL.
It's a binary file. Anybody can rename it to whatever they want.
Exactly. Yeah. So it is a binary. This whole thing is distributed as one single file. There is no container. Yeah, it's fantastic. So I do have to thank David for this because we got the idea from the Volt CTL command line tool that he wrote, and actually borrowed a fair amount of code from Volt CTL. So I'm not going to give a full detailed background on XOS because that's a somewhat large topic, and it's something we have, I think, touched on before in other SEBA meetings. We've done XOS presentations. A brief overview of XOS is that it manages services in SEBA. XOS is a data model that stores information about services. It can store information on behalf of services. And it facilitates coordination between services. For example, we use it to implement some of our workflows like the ATT workflow that SEBA uses. So we already have a graphical user interface for XOS, and we already have a shell, Python-based shell for XOS. But so far, we've never had a command line client for XOS, and people have had to use something like curl. Which gets pretty inconvenient to be typing curl syntax every time you want to do a simple change to the system. So anyway, let me start giving you a little bit of a demo of Cord CTL. So it has a config file. You can ignore this first API version thing. That was a holdover from Volt CTL that I haven't removed. But the rest of it here, this is telling you the server you want Cord CTL to connect to. So this thing supports running the command line utility at home against a server, out at the site. You've got your username and password credentials to log into it. As David said, this is a single binary. It's written in Golang, so you don't have to use a container or anything. You can just run it. You give it the -H, it'll of course tell you what it can do and what its available commands are. So this is currently a work in progress, so we only have a few commands listed, but it can do things like it can manage your backups of XOS, can inspect some modeling, you can learn stuff about what services are loaded, you can do file transfer, and it can tell you its version. So it will automatically connect to the server as necessary. So you can see here when I did the version command, it told me both information about the client, that's the local binary that was compiled, and it told me information down here about the server. So it contacted the server, asked what version of XOS was running, and it also reported what Python, what Git commit was used to build that XOS, the date, and the operating system architecture. So for example, let me list what services XOS knows about. So XOS does support dynamic loading of services. You can add services at runtime to a pod. These are all of the services that typically come with a SEBA pod. So you can see like Kubernetes service, the virtual OLT, the fabric, and of course the ATT workflow driver. This is telling you the dynamic load state. So these are what services are loaded into XOS, and that all of these services are present. So typically this has been something that our QA and automation tools have always had to query this at some step during the running a tool to see, you know, make sure all of my services are loaded. So this kind of gives you an easy entry point into knowing that these services are in XOS and it's ready. Now, in case, you know, human readable text is not useful to your automation tool, you can get the output in JSON. It's all the same output in that table, but it's in JSON. Or you can get it in YAML. Again, all the same information. For each subcommand, I'm going to transition over to the modeling command. If you give a subcommand a -H option, it'll tell you what the subcommand can do. So the model command is used to query and manipulate XOS models. That's kind of XOS's primary task is for storing these modeling data. So this is one of the major features we're working on in the command line client, and there's two available commands at the moment. One of them is to get the available models, and these pauses here are while it's actually contacting the server. But here is, you know, all of the models that XOS knows about. So it knows, you know, things about the ATT workflow driver. It knows things about OLTs and PON ports. You know, all of the stuff that you would expect the NEM layer to know about. We can query a specific model, and it'll tell us which ones of those are present. So for example, if I do a list ONU device, this is telling me that there's one ONU device. It's the PON SIM ONU, it's serial number, it's enabled, etc. This, of course, is a SEBA in a box that I'm using, so it does only have one ONU and one OLT, but on a real pod, you'd get a long table of your ONUs. Let me try a more complicated model. So here's the site model. This tells information about the site where the NEM is running. So certain things like the longitude and latitude would be filled in. So you can see these tables, they can get kind of wide over time. There's actually quite a bit of fields that are hidden that I've automatically set it to filter out stuff that people usually don't care about. If I wanted to, I could show all of those hidden fields, and we will get a very wide, this is like a 5-page wide list of entries for this one table entry. You can format this to get custom fields. So here I'm going to tell it just to show me the ID, name, and backend status of each site. So that brings it down to a more manageable state. And of course, you could do this command in JSON to get JSON output if you wanted as well. The final thing I'm going to show is that this is one of the front ends to our new backup and restore feature. So we have added the ability to back up all of the state inside of XOS into a single backup file, which you can then store someplace and restore at will. You can do that through the GUI, but you can also do it through the command line tool. And the command line syntax is relatively simple. You just say backup create, and then you give it a local file name. If I run this, it's going to actually execute several different RPCs. So it created a new backup create operation in XOS, and now it's waiting for that operation to complete. So generally, everything in XOS is asynchronous. You submit a request to XOS, and then you have to kind of pull and wait for that request to complete. So right now it's waiting. It completed. The status was the backup was created. This file URI is the location of the backup inside of the NEM. And then the client went ahead and it downloaded that backup, storing it in the file my backup, and it recorded the status as successful. There's a hash. This is actually a streaming gRPC, so there were 6 gRPC requests that composed that stream, and the size of the backup was 373 kilobytes. Restoring it is the identical process. You just give it the name of the backup you want to restore, creates the restore operation, and then it sits here waiting for that operation to complete. And it'll just
Is there
take.
a way to suppress some of this output? So assuming if you do -o JSON on one of these commands, you'll get that last table status check some chunks and bytes. But I couldn't pipe that right through JQ because I have all the other text that's being output. Are you able to suppress that so I just could do the same thing, would just suppress output so I could do this command and pipe it through JQ and get that status check?
Yeah, there is a -Q option for quiet, and I'm in the middle of implementing that for backup and restore. So I think right now -Q turns off these dots on the waiting for completion, but I don't think I have it surrounding all of the various printfs that are happening there. But as soon as I'm done with that, yeah, the -Q will suppress everything except the JSON status.
All right, cool, thanks.
That's the goal. So here our restore completed and the core is back up and running. So this here is really what I'm prepared to show today. So any questions?
Just a simple one, Scott. Where someone can download this CLI tool?
So Zach is working on a job, I think, that will take these binary artifacts that are built and publish them someplace. So I would hand that question off to Zach as to how they will be published and how someone will go about retrieving them.
Yeah, I am working on a script that basically, when a new version of this is published, it builds it in Go, and then takes those as artifacts and publishes them to GitHub with checksums and whatnot. That's not ready yet. It hasn't been my highest priority currently, but I intend to get that done in the next week or two.
How about what is it different from open cod.codctl, which is already there on the tree in the GitHub? On the GitHub?
Yeah, this would be publishing. So GitHub is the concept of releases. And so in addition, it would be publishing binary artifacts to the releases tab in GitHub, not just publishing code.
You mean we won't be able to see the source? Are you saying we can't get the source?
Oh, you can always get the source. This is just because it's Golang, it's easy to publish binary versions. So if you look at other projects, for example, like kubectl and other things, they will, on their GitHub release page, they will have a bunch of download links that will give you binaries. And we're trying to do the same thing.
The other thing that this, well, I don't know if Scott, you've added it yet, it does completion. So bash shell completion.
Yeah, I have not added that yet. So
okay.
As David adds new features to Volt-CTL, I am sort of, one day behind copying them into CTL.
Right.
So I will do that.
That'll also include filling in parameters such that, like when you showed your list models, you can tab and it'll list all the valid models, so you can complete those as well. And so you have kind of this really nice completion mechanism. And that's not me, that's actually some of the libraries we're using, but it does make the command easier to use.
Yeah, we'll definitely be adding support for that in. And again, you're seeing this tool kind of in its infancy. For example, we've got ways to list models, but I haven't added the command to create models or update models. But I expect to be continuing this to fill out the feature set.
And Scott, is this? I would assume it's based on the Volta 1.6 or 1.7 release, right? Or this has nothing to do. It's the release of the Volta version is irrelevant.
So I would say it's mostly irrelevant. So this is talking to XOS, but of course XOS is currently using a particular Volta release, and I think we're using the 1.x release. So, our virtual OLT service, for example, is currently written to use 1.x. So you may see certain 1.x isms, in here, but it's a very indirect relationship.
David, the VLT app is for the 2.0. Is that different than the 1.x?
You mean the Volt Cuddle?
Yeah.
The Volt Cuddle is when Scott showed the config file, there was an API version at the top of it. Volt Cuddle actually should work with both the 1.6 tree and the 2.0 tree. Back to self-blame, I haven't tested as well against the 2.0 tree, but it should work. So the idea is that you can specify the version either in the config file or via the command line and talk to either a 1.6 or a 2.0 Volta server.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I'm going to take back control and jump into the Jira review with our remaining time.
Sounds good. Thank you, Zach.
Alrighty. Back in Jira, I have a list of things that we've done since the last review. I think it's starting off with a lot of Andy's items. Andy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So the first item was SEBA 633, ONU and disable and re-enable breaks SEBA in a box.
Yeah. The issue here was a problem with the OLT app not handling the port removed event correctly. So I was able to fix that and should be fine now. It didn't seem to, I'm not sure why it didn't affect other scenarios than SEBA in a box, because like I said, it is in the OLT app itself. But the problem is solved now, so.
Okay.
SEBA 571, this is mostly Mateo's work, but I claimed credit for it, apparently. So this was the NAM, we had disabled NAM processing of the ONU disable event because it was causing problems in the tests under certain scenarios. I don't know the details there. Maybe Mateo, if people are curious, can fill it in. But that problem has been fixed now, and those events are now being processed correctly. SEBA 613 is, so if you are building SEBA in a box and you type make latest, then it downloads the latest versions of all the NAM services and Volta and latest versions of the ONOS apps. So this is like a development version of SEBA, and we needed to fix the SEBA 633 ONU disable re-enable problem in order to get that working. And then I think there were a couple of minor changes to the tests that needed to happen. But now, well, there's a minor problem with the make latest right now in the when it runs the tests. But that's a problem with the tests themselves, not the build. So as of yesterday, this was working, and we'll get the tests all fixed later today. SEBA 634, this was problems reported by people on Slack, I guess, as we've been checking in new features to to the SEBA Helm charts and updating the services, there were some issues with the documentation that for SEBA 6.1 that the newest charts were not compatible with the documentation. That's resolved now. SEBA 525, this is for the Turk Telecom workflow that the Turk Telecom workflow doesn't do authentication at the same stage that the AT&T workflow does. So we wanted to configure ONOS not to intercept those packets. SEBA 607, I don't recall what this is. Can you click on it? Oh, this was, yeah, so the latest ONOS app for the OLT adds a flow that has VLAN 4091 and PONSIM doesn't know what to do with that that VLAN tag. It doesn't currently tag the packets with that VLAN. So I modified PONSIM to add another flow that doesn't have the VLAN tag in order to trap those packets. So that's kind of a hack. I'm not actually sure if there's a better way to do it, but just in order for us to continue making progress. And that looks like it's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Andy. The next item was SEBA 425. This is assigned to Charles, but Sarav created it. Investigate current IGMP handling with Volta and ONOS apps.
Yeah, Charles is on vacation, but this investigation was done and its results, if you scroll down, there's a link to the multicast design document. So the multicast brigade for SEBA and Volta it's very detailed design and all the changes. And if you scroll down some more, you will find that some more, and you will find that all the design ideas have been translated into SEBA, and if you scroll down some more, Volta Jira tickets, right? So the multicast brigade is right now engaged in implementing these.
And those are changes against 1.6 in Volta that will move forward to 2.0 at some point? How are we going to track
that's the hope. Yeah, we're doing it in 1.x because of the need to get it done as soon as possible for Netsia and Turk Telecom needs. And just like technology profiles is now being translated into Volta 2.0, the hope is that in the near future, the multicast will also be.
Yeah, I guess the question is, should we create JIRAs for Volta 2.0 for each of these Volta 1.x JIRAs that basically says, go port this, or how's that going to be managed?
Well, it's really up to Sean and Julie. What you suggest can be done as well. It just doesn't need to be immediately tracked, I think. So it's really up to Julie.
All right, thanks.
So not all of them would need to be translated because, say, some of the places, I think about 60-70% of the code is common. The ONOS changes, the OpenOLT changes, they're all common. It's just some things in the OLT and ONU adapters that will need to be ported. So not all the stories need to be ported, just a few of them.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Moving on, the next few items, there are two, I think these are related to abstract OLT that are marked as won't do because of AT&T moving away from abstract OLT. A few items are in that category. And the last one was using a tag version of the MongoDB driver. Don had an outstanding patch that switched to dep and updated the MongoDB driver, which has been merged. The next item was SEBA 547, adding technology profile support in NEM. Hardik worked this, and Matteo supported that. Is Hardik on?
Yes, Zach. Hi. So as part of this activity, we have introduced the technology profile support in the NEM. So now we can configure the technology profile into the etcd store through the OLT service. Yeah. And that can be pushed into the etcd store and can be utilized by the Volt adapters.
Okay, great. Thanks, Hardik. The next few items were testing related. Is Kailash on?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I created these. These are related to, I'm going to start at 588, but these are related to NEM service upgrades.
Yes, so this involves, so for each Garrett check-in for each of the XOS services, we go through a pipeline where we deploy a released and tested version of that service, and then we build the container with the changes for that patch set, and then we attempt to upgrade to that container and validate that that container comes up and the services comes up healthy. So that's what this patch is for. And then the other two right there, the SEBA 589 and 591. So yeah, I'll talk about this one first. So the NEM service upgrade data persistence test. So in the same job that I just described, where you upgrade the service with your patch, we also, before we upgrade the service, we create a data model for one of the services. For one of the data models in your service using REST API, and then we upgrade the service and validate that that data model still persists in NEM. So that's done in the same pipeline as well. And then the other task right there, yeah, so API validation test. So this is related to what I just talked about. So generating. Yeah, so we're auto-generating these API tests. We're looking up the protocol, the proto files for each data model, generating an API test for those services, creating them before we upgrade the service, and then validating that they still exist after the service. So these are all related, but they're all done in different stages in the same pipeline. So this is done on all of the NEM services.
So this helps validate that we haven't broken anything API-wise. I haven't had any API-level breakage between non-major versions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Let's thank you, Kailash. Moving on, there are a few items. I think these are related to the offline installation. It looks like these are signed to Luca, who is no longer at ONF, but they're tasks that were that I created that were about doing creating an offline installation, getting container images, and getting those onto disk so that they could be shipped on a USB stick or something, so an offline installation could happen. The next item was SEBA 610. Mahir made that. Is Mahir on? This looks like it's a bug related to BVSIM that was resolved. Moving on, SEBA 649. This is another bug that Matteo found.
Yeah, actually, someone on the meeting found it and reported it. We debugged it together, and it was as simple as we weren't exposing one configuration parameter in this Kubernetes profile. So that has been fixed, and now you can actually configure that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matteo. The next item was documentation.
Yeah, so as part of some discussion in the mailing list and in various meetings, we realized that the guide was not explaining how to set up all the things you need around the SEBA pod. These are not necessarily within the SEBA pod, but there are things that you need to validate that your stuff working in a client to send traffic in a DHCP server. Not so. This is not the only solution possible. It's what we are doing in our lab, and it's something that works to test that the SEBA deployment actually works. So we feel it was useful for other people to have at least a small guideline on how to set them up.
Okay, and 543.
Yeah, this was a very small bug in the GUI. A while back, we changed the way we mark required field in Xproto, and that change was not reflected in the gRPC endpoint that is used by the GUI to get a model list with all the definition. So there was just a asterisk mark in the required fields that was not given anymore in the now it's back.
Okay, and then the last one was deletion of subscriber. This is a won't fix.
Yeah, that doesn't apply anymore. That was a case in the top-down provisioning. That was the first draft version of SEBA. That is a stuff that no one is using, and the services have changed that much since we opened that bug that it has been fixed from other versions.
Okay, and 574.
Yeah, there were just a bunch of code in the repo manifest that we were not using anymore, so we just cleaned things up a little.
Okay, and that also makes checking out and synchronizing your repo tree a lot faster. So thank you for that, Matteo. 598.
One was an issue that Tibit actually found while trying to integrate their OLT into SEBA. The main difference here is that their OLT requires an in-band kind of communication, so you provision it through Volta using the MAC address and not the IP plus port combination. And this case was never really tested too deeply in the OLT service. So when we were pulling in information from Volta, it was breaking things.
Okay, thank you, Matteo. The next item was 570, an API for a NEM-managed component backup restore. Scott handled this?
Sure. So this was sort of all of the server-side stuff that does backup and restore, kind of the back-end stuff hidden behind the demo I did this morning. So what we've done is we've added an API to the NEM so that it can back up and restore itself, and it's an asynchronous API. You queue a request into the system saying what you want backed up and where you want it stored at, and then the core will kind of restart. It'll run a backup. It'll store the file where it's supposed to go. The restore process is kind of the opposite of that. You upload a file someplace, and you queue in the request to restore it, and then it acts upon that. We do have a design document. I'm not sure if it's linked to the issue or not, that kind of talked about our design process. Yeah, if it's not linked in there, I'll make sure it ends up linked in there or documented someplace. It talked about our design process, how we arrived at this solution, and the alternatives we considered, and how this solution may be extensible to other components as well. And I think that's it for this one.
Okay, thank you, Scott. SEBA 528 is Suchitran.
Yes, hi, Zach. So this is about optimization of our automated test that we run on the Jenkins pod every night. So it was just regrouping the existing tests so that before we we do not want to clean up the XOS objects every time after running a scenario. So this has been automated for a while, and we were like monitoring it on the Jenkins job, and it has been successfully tested. So that is all.
Okay, thanks, Suchitra. SEBA 650 is something I did. It's so in testing we have executor units that are spun up by Jenkins. So where tests happen. Those were previously on Golang 1.10. We updated it to 1.12. There's some various requests, mainly related to the core CTL and other things that wanted to be updated. This is testing only, not actually inside containers, per the discussion at the Volta meeting earlier. So that's that. The last item was BBSIM. It was about ONU activation. Is Zdravko on?
No, I don't think the draft goes on, but I can take it. This is something from the BBSIM brigade. BBSIM we're now trying to have that work with, let's see, Volta 1.x master. And so that means it has tech profile features, which BBSIM was not handling. And so the Zdravko added related OMCI stuff to make it work with make tech profiles work.
Okay, thanks, Saurabh, for that update. So those are the things that were completed. I wanted to look also at things that are in progress.
Actually, Zach, can I take the screen for a second? I just wanted to introduce some the SEBA 2.0 work that we have started, or maybe you could do it too. Well, actually, let me just try.
I'll pass it over
grab
to
the screen for a second. Yeah, thanks.
You should have rights now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So for a while we've had sort of two versions over here, SEBA 2.0 and the next items that we were doing for SEBA 2.0. But now that is closed, and now we're preparing for SEBA 2.0 by the end of June. And as you can see, all the issues, we have about 120 issues over here that will change. About 25% of them are currently done. And so if you look at the list of epics that are under, it's the same as before, focus being on technology profile, pod management, device management is about Redfish. I've only added one story over here. There's actually many more, but they are put in future right now, and some of them will be brought in to SEBA 2.0 once we can find who's, I think EdgeCore is taking care of this with help from, was it Starlight? That they were managing this work with Redfish. So that's a brigade for pod management that's going on. There's another brigade for FCAPS from ONOS, and as you can see, we have folks from Karthik and Vijay from Infosys that is implementing things for FCAPS from ONOS. Similarly, there's FCAPS from Volta, and again, Ganesh and Onkar, they're from Starlight. They're also implementing this part. We always have things related to hardware reboots and bugs related to that. Backup and restore, I think this morning or just earlier on this call, Scott gave a demonstration of that as part of the cord CTL work. There's also some other NEM related issues, northbound, and BBSIM work that happens in the BBSIM brigade with Kieta and Zdravko involved over there. There's some components that we will have to update. We have already done that, but we need to release them. And then, of course, there's automation of tests that going on through Suchitra and the QA team. There's also documentation that we'll have to do for SEBA 2.0 and more maintenance tasks, which are really just bugs that we find and list over here. The one big thing that has come in is the multicast workflow that you will find SN from Netsia and her team are implementing parts of it. But also we have Shekhar and Vignesh from Infosys handling parts of it. And also on the Volta Jira, you will find that there is a similar multicast support that comes from Rajendra from Sterlite and also SN's team from Netsia. So that's just a quick overview of the things that we are trying to get done for SEBA 2.0 by the end of June. And there's still tasks that are unassigned, but we do have a healthy set of contributions coming in from multiple organizations. So I encourage you, if there is things that you'd like to pick up for SEBA 2.0, please do let me know or become part of the existing brigades. Okay, that's all I had to say, Zach. Back over to you.
Thanks, Sarah, for that overview. I'd like to go over things that are in progress to make sure that nobody has a blocker or anything else. Do that. So the first couple were FCAPs from ONOS that are in progress. This is Kartik and Vijay. Are either of them on?
Yeah, Vijay here. So we are currently working on it. It's a big one with around 11 to 12 requirements within it, Jira SEBA 37. So probably in by tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we'll put the code for Gerrit review.
Okay, thank you, Vijay. And then the 595 was operational status of the optical data in the ONT. This is Onkar.
Yeah. So yeah, hi all. So as a part of 595, so we are getting the ONT related information. So basically I have given the presentation to the FCAP pod management brigade, and I have posted my PPT to the Volta discuss group for validating the output which I am getting from the ONT as a part of OMCI test run action implementation. So I am working on the validation of output. Once it get validated, so maybe I'll push my code for the code review.
Thank you, Onkar. Yep. The next items were Ganesh. These are related to Redfish.
So I have started with 631. That's logger. Yeah, basically this is the parent item, the 599. And I have created a couple of other along with that. That is 631 and 632. 631 is to add the support for logger to the existing Kafka exporter. And I have done with the coding, but some part of this ticket is dependent on 632, where we want to make some of the parameters configurable using config map. So I'm on to this now, 632. And yeah, these two things are going parallel. So this weekend I'm targeting to code and raise review maybe first half of next week.
Okay, and so when you're talking topics, you're talking about which Kafka topics, the Kafka topics?
Yeah, so the broker and topics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ganesh.
Okay.
The next item was SEBA 385. This was Shad's item about physically rebooting the OLT. Is Shad on?
No, but I can take it. I think Radisys has committed some a patch that we are currently investigating about OLT rebooting. So this is just related to that.
Okay, thanks, Saurav. The next items were related to backup and restore. I think this is Scott and Kailash.
They were just talking.
Yeah, so the first one, the gRPC upload and download, I think that's done pending review right now. Yeah, that was just to implement the gRPC endpoints using streaming. The other one that was listed for me is the command line interface for backup and restore. I think that's also done pending review. So those will probably get marked off by the end of the day and then move on to something else in that epic.
Okay, and
592 is testing of the backup and restore feature and functionality. So we have some test cases here that does just a simple backup and restore, but we need to expand this to do a couple of negative test cases as well as trying to upload a incorrect backup file or trying to upload the same one twice and see what happens and stuff. So we need to expand a little bit of that testing. So it's in progress. It should get done soon as well.
okay, thanks, Kailash. Thanks, Scott. SEBA 112, cleanup naming of Pano and Uport. Mateo is working on this.
Yeah, so that is in progress. It has been reviewed. We have a couple things fixed with the test because we are in the process of renaming that service. But this was just a bad choice made back in the days of the name of testing that's been fixed.
Okay, thank you, Mateo. SEBA 8, an agent to subscribe to alarms. I think this is on Kafka. This is related to I think the Vez agent, because I think William's been working on this. I'm not sure if William is on here. So I think this must still be in progress from quite a while ago. I'm going to move on. SEBA 651. This I think is a BBSIM issue that Kata has been working on.
Yeah, basically the DHCP part in BBSIM was being triggered just on a time basis, but we would rather have it be triggered by Volta and actually sending it a DHCP flow. So that happens then. So he's working on that right now.
Okay, thanks, Saurav. And then the next was a gRPC or REST API.
Yes, the Dropco is working on that. It's just sometimes really convenient for us to being able, think of it like a CLI for BBSIM to be able to trigger certain events manually or randomly during execution.
Okay, that sounds good. Moving on, SEBA 443 was updating to a newer version of ONOS. I think how far through the release process are we on this?
I think we just need to go through the QA. I think we'll have a session this afternoon and determine if there are changes needed in ONOS at all. Otherwise, we should be able to release it by the end of the week.
Okay, and did we decide that 113 was what the 2.0 is going to be on? Or are we thinking of
yes,
getting beyond that?
It's going to be on 113, yes.
Okay. Alrighty, the next item was simple example service documentation is broken. This was Scott. I think this is just
Yeah, so this should probably be in to-do state rather than in progress, as I haven't touched it recently.
okay.
Basically, we had a bad link in the documentation, and I need to go back to see if it resolved itself due to other work or whether it still needs fixing.
Okay, I changed it to do. Thank you, Scott. The next was a Kafka Onos app thread error. This is a bug. Matteo, I guess.
Basically, when the Kafka application on top of Onos starts, it tries to register to connection with Kafka itself, and that is causing this error. It's been resolved. It's in Garrett. I just got reviews, so I'm probably going to merge it sometime soon.
Okay, thank you, Matteo. The next few are automation and tests. I think there's Suchitra.
Yes, I think the first one is about the admin enable disable on the pods. So we already have that Andy already covered as part of SIAB. So it's already automated. It just needs to be tested. So,
okay.
And maybe can you go back? Yeah. So these are the upgrade tests that we have created at the XOS level. Now we want to just expand these upgrade tests using at the pod level, at the system wide. After upgrading Helm charts, then we just need to make sure that functionally all the scenarios are running fine after the upgrades.
Okay, and then 601.
Yeah, so this is about the cross-connect validations. After, in some of the scenarios, we have these as part of SIAB, but we want to cover it as part of pod testing as well. So these are very minor assertions or checks that we want to add as part of the functional tests we have on pods.
Okay, thank you, Suchitra. The next one was SEBA 661, renaming an XOS service. I think this is naming changes that to match up with the repositories, which I think, Matteo, are you handling some of these? I think we've had some bugs related to, or at least some upgrade pains related to this.
Yeah, so the issue is that some services lives in a repository that is different from the service name, and that is breaking the service upgrade test that Kailash wrote earlier. So we have two ways to go, or making the test smart enough to know about these difference and match them, or rename the services. I started looking at this yesterday. Renaming the services will trigger a cascade of changes everywhere. So we may just want to think about it a little bit. Maybe it's a good topic for tomorrow's technical call.
Okay, thank you, Matteo. And the last item was SEBA 635, which is about adding multi-class support in Volta and OpenOLT, which, Sarah?
Yeah, actually, this one is just a reference to all the things, the epic that is in Volta, that is actually doing all these, adding the multicast support in Volta.
Okay, thank you, Saurav. I think we're at the top of the hour, so I know we have a few items that are still in the to-do state, but it looks like there wasn't anything really blocking in the list of things that are being worked on right now. So I think I'm going to call the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for looking at this, and thank you, Scott, for the Core CTL demo. We'll talk to everyone next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.